Hi everyone, my name is Alexa Artiaga and I'm a senior here at the University of Florida. I'm majoring in health education and behavior with a specialization in community health promotion. And this summer I attended a 4-week long study abroad program through the University of Florida. And through this program, I was living in London, England for 2 weeks and Paris, France for another 2 weeks. And this experience has taught me so many things. So today I'm going to be just discussing a little bit about what I feel that this abroad experience has taught me, just by answering a few interview questions. So the first question is, what surprised you most about this experience? And in the first place, the fact that I was able to be there in this experience was surprising enough. Going onto a study abroad is something that I have always wanted to do, but something that I never really thought that I would actually be able to do just because of my hectic schedule as a pre-health student. But the way that this opportunity was presented to me and the fact that it kind of just like perfectly fell into my lap, and I was able to take two specialization courses for my major, Trends in International Health and Culture and Health. Really made this a fantastic opportunity, and I had to seize it once it was offered to me. And so I think the biggest thing once I was actually there on the trip that surprised me was just how quickly I was able to feel comfortable and kind of like assimilate within these foreign countries. I felt like there was going to be a really sharp learning curve once I was actually there, and that it was going to take me a really long time to adjust kind of like to the schedule, to the way of life, to sort of like navigating around the streets, navigating the underground or the metro. But I really, really surprised myself in a great way that I felt like it was really easy for me to like quickly get adapted, to get into the swing of things, and um, especially to navigate the metro. I feel like I got really good at that really fast. And just kind of really familiarizing myself with the area that we were staying in, as well as just kind of like some of like the cultural customs and just kind of like falling in line with that. Like a lot of like the terminology that they use in London that's different. Um, like calling French fries, um, chips or potato chips, crisps, and trainers, sneakers, lift, elevator, and flat apartment, and all of these different types of things. I feel like I got really accustomed to the lingo really quickly, which really benefited me because I feel like I was able to communicate better and more directly um, with the people there once I was there. And then likewise in France, although I don't speak French, I do speak Spanish. And I know a couple words here and there in French. So I feel like it was surprisingly easier than I expected for me to be able to communicate, or at least to like be able to read signage while I was navigating myself around the city. The next question is going into, what did I enjoy most about the trip? This is a hard question because I enjoyed so much about the trip. One of the biggest things that I really enjoyed was the food, particularly in Paris. I had lots of French onion soup, lots of escargot, and it was just a really wonderful experience. And particularly when I like to travel, I love food. I'm a huge foodie, so I really love to like travel through food and like try all of like the local like traditional foods, and as well as just like kind of try everything and go out of my comfort zone and try things that maybe I normally wouldn't. So I really did enjoy the like food experience. Um, we also did like 3 o'clock tea in London. So just like all of these things, I think you can learn a lot about a person's culture through their food. So that is something that I really enjoyed. Another thing that I really enjoyed was the freedom and accessibility of the metro system. I live in Miami, Florida, where we do have a public transport system and a metro, but it is just not nearly as good as in Europe, or particularly in London and Paris, that I can directly speak on. The metro system there was amazing. I feel like you could get basically anywhere you wanted in the city by the metro, and it was pretty affordable, pretty easy to navigate once you get used to it. Um, from where I live, the nearest like metro stop away from me is like at least a half hour away. So it kind of like defeats the purpose. If I need to use the metro for something, there's not a metro nearby me. I would have to like drive to take that metro in the first place. So it's kind of like not very accessible. You can't use it to get anywhere you want in the city. Whereas in these European cities, I really could rely on the metro to basically take me anywhere I needed to. And even if the metro didn't take me exactly where I needed to, usually it was just kind of like a short walk away. And in London, actually, in particular, because even though it was such a big city, everything was kind of like close by. I really felt like I could walk everywhere. Whereas in Paris, it was a little bit farther apart, and you definitely did need to use the metro a bit more. But overall, I was just really impressed and really, really enjoyed being able to use these public transport systems and not have to rely on things like cars and taxis and Ubers, but really be able to use the metro system, which in transversely I also think really helped me with like in terms of cultural immersion, because you're kind of like transporting yourself in the way that the people that live there use day to day. So I feel like you're allowing more of like a cultural immersion and like just kind of like learning a lot through doing things as they do. And the other thing that I enjoyed most about the trip is just I ended up forming a lot of really wonderful relationships with the other students that I went on the trip with. Going into study abroad, I wasn't terribly close with anybody, so I was a little bit nervous about kind of like going out there by myself. But I have made so many wonderful friendships that I feel like are going to last me a lifetime. And I'm so grateful for this experience for allowing me to become so close with so many of my peers that I may not have otherwise. And the last thing that I really, really enjoyed about this trip was I just felt very liberated. I think in the United States, we're so, and especially when you are a college student, you're so used to like a certain way of life, to everything, being in a schedule and constantly being in a rush and a time crunch going to do the next thing. And when I was in London and Paris, I finally really felt like I was able to kind of slow down and really be present in the moment, which I think was so wonderful because it allowed me to just take in so much more of the experience and really be way more appreciative and get way more out of it than I maybe would have otherwise. And that kind of like taking it slow and really appreciating where you are, the space that you're in, the company that you're with is something that I most definitely think I will continue to implement in my life when I'm back here in the United States. So my next question is, what would you like to experience more of? And I think the biggest thing is that I would really like to experience more of the local culture. I feel like when you're a tourist, there is a tendency to do more like touristy things, especially when you know you only have a limited amount of time in the place that you're in. And so obviously in London and Paris, we did have to do like some of the touristy things like the hop on and off bus, going to see, the Big Ben, going to see the Eiffel Tower and the Arc de Triomphe, and like all of these like touristy spots. And especially because our hotel was in a central location, but at the same time, I felt like more of like a touristy location, just by nature of being a hotel. um, that we were in more of like the spot where you go when you're visiting, as opposed to the next time that I'm traveling to these places. I really want to even more deeply immerse myself into like the local culture and kind of just like be able to be living my day to day as truly how a local would be. And I think also maybe being able to spend more time there, you would even feel more like that. So I do feel like especially near the end of the trip, I began to feel more of like that local type of feeling. Um, but I think now that I've already been there and kind of gotten all of those like touristy things out of the way, I can go straight into just really having that like local authentic experience right from the get-go. And then the other thing that I would like to experience more is I feel like it would be really cool to in the future go and just travel all around Europe, kind of do like a backpacking situation where I can take, the Interrail or the Eurostar and just go to like a bunch of different places all around Europe and like stay in hostels and just kind of like have that, a backpacking experience where I can go and just see so many places in a certain amount of time, just maybe like traveling all around Europe for like a month. I think would be a really cool experience because it's a really unique experience. I think now that I've been in Europe and traveled internationally by myself, I have the confidence to be able to do that, whereas previously I don't think I would have. And it's just a cool way to meet a lot of new people, experience a lot of new things, and experience a lot of new places. And definitely now that I have traveled, I have a little bit of like the travel bug, and I'm dying for my next opportunity to be able to travel again. The next question going into it is, how have I grown personally through this experience? This is a hard question to answer because I feel like I have grown in so many ways. It is hard to pick just a few. Um, but I think the biggest way that I have grown personally is just increased confidence in myself. And this I kind of previously touched upon, but this is my first time traveling alone anywhere, basically, but especially internationally. And it was something that I was really excited for, but also really nervous for going into this experience. And I feel like now that I have actually done it, I have so much more confidence instilled in myself to go and like travel and really just in general put myself out there in the future. So, um, in terms of personal growth, I think that this having this trip and this experience has really increased my confidence just for like any type of situation that I will encounter in the future, either traveling to a new place, going into a new job, living in a new city, meeting new people. I feel like I can do it. And not only do I feel like I can, but I want to. So it's kind of like once I put my toe in the water, I just am ready to like put myself out there even more. I was always kind of wondering if I would ever move out of my hometown in Miami, Florida. And now I'm even considering what if I would want to move internationally? What if I would want to work in like public health and public policy? But not just within the United States, actually working for like an international organization, all of these different things, which kind of bleeds into the next question of how do you grown professionally? Um, but I think it just has like opened the floodgates and opened to my eyes to the possibility for so many more experiences and having like the confidence in myself to know that I can handle those experiences and that I want to have those experiences. As well as just I feel like it has just increased my cultural competency tenfold because it has exposed me to like other cultures and other ways of life and like how you may have to step outside of yourself and realize that the way of life that you're used to is not necessarily the standard. There are so many other ways of doing things. And it's about when you see those differences, appreciating those differences and not being judgmental, but kind of just like, oh, like, I wonder why you do that. And you may realize that that is a better way of doing things, or maybe it's just a different way of doing things. And just kind of like exposing yourself to so many different possibilities has just really like opened my eyes to all of these different possibilities. And I'm really excited to continue to explore these possibilities as I progress. The next question is, how have you grown as a student through this experience? And I think an interesting thing that I've really grown with that I did not expect was that it's really helped to teach me kind of like an aspect of work-life balance. Because I was taking two classes, and one of my classes being at the graduate level while living abroad in Europe as a 20-year-old girl alone. It can definitely be easy to get tempted by all of the things that Europe has to offer. Make friends, you want to go out, you want to go to parties, you want to go see things. There's always just like this go, 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 go kind of feeling that there's always something to do next. And there's just so many options. It's like the world is your oyster. And on top of that, you're, traveling alone independently as a young adult, there's so many temptations, and it can make it really, really easy to kind of like get behind on work and get distracted with those things and put work on like the back burner. But it was important for me to remember that although this is an amazing adventure, my primary reason to be here is school, is academics, and to further my academic career. And so it really did help to teach me that balance of like schoolwork and at the same time living life in a new country and exploring a completely new place and kind of having like that happy medium of like work time and playtime. And then it was important, although they had all of these things that I was so excited to explore, to remember that I had responsibilities to myself, to my university that I had to take care of first, and just kind of creating that schedule of being able to like stay on top of my work, and still continue to excel academically while also enjoying myself in a new place. And I think that not only is important to learn as a student, that balance, but it's also important to learn professionally, which leads me directly into my next question about how have I grown professionally through this experience. Um, Obviously, I've already touched upon that kind of like work-life balance of having like these temptations of all these things you want to do, but staying focused on your work and making sure not only that you're doing it, but that you're doing it at like a high quality standard. But additionally, it just exposed me, like I've said previously, to so many different walks of life. And I think this is so crucial, especially when you're working as a health educator. When you're a health educator, you are going to be meeting so many different types of people. And in America, I feel like we have this tendency to assume that the way that we do things is the right way to do things. And anybody that doesn't want to do it that way is maybe like uneducated or ill-informed. But in order to work as a health educator, you need to understand that everybody is coming from a different place. Everybody is a product of like their environment, their culture, the way that they grew up, the things that they were exposed to. And it's important to be cognizant of that when you are trying to advise somebody or give them some type of treatment. There are so many gaps and inadequacies in the healthcare system, and as a health educator, it is my responsibility to learn and to grow my skills of cultural competency in order to better serve and advise my patients to give them the best possible outcome. And if I'm not being aware of those cultural differences, then I'm really failing my patients because I'm failing to meet them at where they're at and to approach a situation with empathy and an open mind, open to advise them with obviously like what I know is like correct and what I know would be most helpful for them, but also taking into account their beliefs and their lifestyle and their willingness, and taking that account into treatment, but also in education, and just kind of like how I approach a situation in general. Um, every person is so different and we all come from such a different place. So just having that empathy and having that patience to work through that, and to grow from that point is so important, personally and professionally. And I think that is just like the number one biggest thing that I have taken from this experience and that I will continue to implement in both my collegiate and professional career after this experience. And just overall, how has this experience changed you? I feel like this is kind of a cumulative question for everything that I've just talked about. But overall, it has, like I said, made me really confident. It has made me feel like, well, if I can do this, if I can go ahead and navigate a metro rail in a country that I've never been in with a language that I don't speak, and I'm able to do all of these things by myself, then I can do anything and I can really just like take on the world. And it's really easy, especially I think as a young student, to kind of like underestimate yourself and to be fearful that your ambitions are too large, and to kind of like leave that place of comfort. But I think so much of our growth occurs in that uncomfortable space. If you are always comfortable all the time, that is great, but you will never grow. When you're in that space of discomfort, that is when you do the most growth. And this trip has taught me that more than ever. And it has just made me really excited to progress in my career and to hopefully work with more international populations in the future. I have always kind of known that I've wanted to work with minority populations within the United States. But this experience has really broadened my horizons of like all of the possibilities of things that I might want to do, places where I might want to live, people I might want to meet. And I'm really excited for that. I'm really excited for all of the opportunities that this has presented me with, and at the same time, all of the like possibilities that it has opened me to. And that is just the most biggest thing that this study abroad experience has changed for me. So now that we've talked a little bit about myself and how my experience has been with the study abroad, I want to go in a little bit about my cumulative project for this experience, my global citizen portfolio. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we can kind of take a look at this together and run through it a little bit together. So welcome to my Global Citizen portfolio. This is my homepage. This first picture that I have is a picture that I took from the plane ride when I was leaving Miami off to Europe. It was kind of like my goodbye Miami, goodbye home, and going on to the next leg of my journey. So to me, this image was just like very representative of my experience, in that it was me leaving my comfort, leaving my home, and like soaring off to a new place in my life and a new experience in my life. And, kind of like how I was saying, that this experience opened so many opportunities up to me. It made me feel like I was like spreading my wings and able to soar. And here I'm like soaring through the sky on my way to London Heathrow Airport. So that's why I chose this image for my front homepage for my Global Citizen portfolio. And then if we scroll down, I have this image of me that was taken at the top of St. Paul's Cathedral in London, England. And it is just like my welcome. Thank you for checking out my Global Citizen portfolio, and follow along as I take you through all of my different experiences through London and France, London and Paris, because this experience has taught me so much about culture and health, and how all of these play into the topic of international health. And I feel like by sharing some of my images, sharing some of my experiences that I recorded as I went along this journey, hopefully you can take at least a sliver of what I was able to gain from this experience, because I think this experience is so wonderful. And I know not everybody is privileged enough to be able to have a study abroad experience like this. So my hope is that at least through sharing some of this information that I've experienced, I can pass on some of the immense knowledge and experience that I have had. And then just if you scroll down, I have a quote which says, "Travel the world, understand different cultures, be inspired by beauty everywhere, make friends all over, and be a citizen of the world." And this is my footer for my whole entire website, because I just felt like this quote rang so true throughout my entire study abroad experience. Traveling the world, understanding different cultures, being inspired by everything that you see, and really being open and present to all of these different experiences and everything that you're seeing, making new friends from different cultures, and just having that exposure to people that think and feel differently than you allows you to increase your cultural competency, and to really just become a global citizen. And I think the more that you travel, the more that you explore, the more that you learn, the more you can become a global citizen. And then these two images that I have here, one on the left is showing Westminster and the Big Ben, and on the right it is showing a view of the Eiffel Tower from the top of the Arc de Triomphe. And this is kind of like a preview of what is to come throughout my portfolio. So next, as we go on through my homepage, and we can go on to my About Me. Oh, and not sure why some of those images are not quite loading, but I will kind of minimize them so you can still see. About Me, again, this is a view of Westminster and the Big Ben. And as I go down, here's actually a picture from the Kew Royal Botanical Gardens. And it's just a little bit of an introduction to myself, that I'm a 20-year-old health education and behavior major. I'm specializing in community health promotion, and I'm also minoring in anthropology, which I think is kind of like a fun extra level to this whole experience, is that in the first place, I am so fascinated by people, by culture, by the way that people are raised, and the history of people, and why we do what we do, and why we believe what we believe. And the reason why I'm so drawn to that kind of thing, which is why I chose to get my minor in anthropology. And I think this especially speaks to this whole experience even more so, which I think is pretty cool. And while I'm touching on this, I would also like to touch a little bit on why a global perspective is important. And why have I taken this combination of degrees in health education, community health promotion, and anthropology? It seems kind of funky when you first hear it, but if you really think about it, it all really falls into place. So my whole life, I've known that I want to work in the healthcare field. Originally, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, then I thought I wanted to be a nurse, and now I'm going to school to become a health educator. So even though I'm not 100% sure exactly where my footing is at, I have stayed true to the fact that I want to work in some type of aspect, improving people's health and helping people live happy and healthy lives. And that's kind of always been my main goal in terms of what I want to do professionally. And I think that having a global perspective when it comes to anything is important, but it is especially important when you are talking about health. Particularly in the United States, and especially where I live in Miami, Florida, we are just known to be a cultural melting pot, meaning that there are so many different people from all over. And like I said, people coming from all over means that they're all coming in with different perspectives, and they're all coming in to form a kind of like singular population, but in reality, this population is a huge hodgepodge of people that all come from different walks of life and all believe different things. Um, and if you only have a mindset of like, well, this is the one way that you do things and this is the right way, then you are not only dismissing such a huge part of that person because our culture and what we believe is a huge part of what makes us us, but you're also kind of just like diminishing so many other possibilities. So we see, for example, in the United States, we tend to rely really heavily on like pharmacology and prescription medicine, and more of like a westernized medicine. But now we kind of like see this, uh, I will call it a trend for lack of a better word, that is more so pushing towards holistic medicine, towards alternative medication, CAM treatments, CAM modalities, more Eastern medicine. And this is something that is new, but in reality is thousands and thousands of years old, coming from all of these different cultures, having using massage, using acupuncture and cupping, using herbs and aromatherapy, using special teas. All of these things are things that have been around for hundreds or thousands of years. And we wouldn't necessarily be able to incorporate these things if we didn't have this like cultural melting pot. We wouldn't know about these things. And that's the really cool thing about when you're looking at things with a global perspective, is that you're able to take things from everywhere to create the best possible outcome. There's no one right or wrong way of doing things. So when you are more open about what possibilities are out there and what can be right, then you're opening yourself up to so many more experiences. And in addition, you're making people feel more comfortable in terms of the healthcare that they're receiving. Let's say if you are Hispanic and you maybe don't speak that great of English, and you're going into a doctor's office, it can be really intimidating, especially if you don't see any other medical practitioners that are Hispanic, any that speak Spanish. First of all, you're having a linguistic barrier that is making it difficult for you to communicate with your provider. But also you kind of feel like unseen and unheard and misunderstood. And there's also many, for example, in the Cuban culture, we tend to, I feel like, prefer a lot of like homeopathic remedies. Some of them are really kind of sound out there, but they are like tried and true methods that any Cuban person will swear by. And if the doctor is kind of approaching the situation like, well, that's just stupid. Why would you believe that? That's not true. And instead just prescribes them a medication and sends them on their way. That isn't really going to be effective. If the doctor instead is like, okay, I understand that maybe this is what you've done historically, and that works for you, and that's great. So you can keep doing that. And we can also maybe start to integrate this type of treatment option or start to integrate this medication. And having that more like global perspective when it comes to health, that you're approaching the situation automatically with more compassion, empathy, and understanding, and also like openness and willingness to hear and to not say like, well, that's just not right, you can't do that at all, but saying this cultural thing is good and we can incorporate two things at once, can actually just lead to a much more positive health outcome as well as a more positive health experience. The other thing about global health is that a big thing is kind of that like act locally, think globally, that everything you do as an individual has kind of like a greater impact on the world. And when we become so individualistic in the way that we think about health, and really in the way that we think about anything, we're ignoring the fact that we are all interconnected as a globe, and the actions of everyone kind of just like eventually falls back on one another. You can throw out a piece of trash on the sidewalk and think, well, it doesn't matter. It's just one little piece of trash. But if every single person in the world every day thought, well, it's just one little piece of trash, then our world would be cluttered and litter, and we would look something like out of a WALL-E movie. And so it's just this kind of like aspect of we all have to appreciate that we are all interconnected, that we all come from different cultural backgrounds, which arms us with different varying levels of knowledge, of understanding, of cultural beliefs, and that just because someone practices something that is different than what you're used to, it does not necessarily mean that it's wrong or incorrect. So kind of just like having this element of empathy and respect is so important, and that is why it's so important to have a global perspective when it comes to health. So a little bit moving on from there and kind of touring the rest of the website. When we come to the next tab of my About Me page, we have my resume. Here is my professional headshot from the University of Florida. And here I have a PDF of my resume, and it is also embedded, but you can also download it as a PDF for your convenience. And then here is the page in which, after this is done, I will be uploading this interview onto my website for your viewing pleasure. And then next up, we have philosophy. So on this first tab, I have my international health philosophy, in which I just kind of delve into what international health means to me, what are the components of it that I think are important, and how I plan to use my knowledge regarding global health and cultural competence to improve my professional contribution to international health as a future health educator. And in my philosophy, I talk largely about accessibility. And I talk about kind of three main pillars of accessibility, which is dietary accessibility, financial accessibility, and physical accessibility. Which I kind of talk about nutrition is such an important foundation of our health. And the fact is that many people in the world either do not have access to enough food or just do not have access to the food that suits their dietary needs and restrictions. And we really have to think about malnutrition, the effects of having adequate levels of macro and micronutrients, and how that can impact our health internationally. The next aspect that I talk about is financial accessibility, and how having a universal healthcare system, although it does have its like pros and cons, overall the main benefit towards having a universal healthcare system is that it is accessible to every person regardless of income level. And in the United States, because we have our healthcare system completely privatized, so many people end up not receiving the professional medical care that they are in need of simply because they cannot afford it, and it may even push them and their families past the poverty line. And to me, that is something that's completely unacceptable, because healthcare should not be a luxury, it should be a human right. And the last thing that I talk about is physical accessibility. And this can mean physical accessibility for like physically disabled people, perhaps like people that need their spaces to be wheelchair accessible, for people that are visually impaired or blind and may need like Braille or audio prompts, people that are deaf, and people that also I discuss linguistic accessibility. If you are not able to communicate with your medical professional, with your doctor, in a language that you are familiar with, then you're not able to properly communicate your ailments to your provider, and your provider is not able to properly communicate with you what you're suffering from in order to prescribe you the right medication, or to explain what that medication or treatment is supposed to do. So it just kind of leaves like this massive gap in between healthcare. And the other thing is also like location, having healthcare options be available to people living in rural communities. Because again, everyone deserves healthcare no matter what. It is not a luxury, it is a right. And this is kind of the main pillars of my international philosophy regarding health. Next, we can look at my culture and health philosophy, which differs a little bit. In terms of the main pillars that I discuss here are appreciating and understanding the cultures of others, being cognizant of how culture and health interplay so closely, and not being disrespectful of other people's culture simply because you don't understand them, and instead kind of like being able to incorporate a person's cultural beliefs with their treatment, and being respectful of that. The next thing is to be aware of your own culture. Especially in America, I believe a lot of people think that because they're American or because they're white, they don't have a culture, when in fact, we do have a very strong culture in America and a lot of cultural nuances that just because we are so used to living here and being born and raised here, we don't realize are a culture thing, not just a normal standard thing. And it's really cool, I think, to study abroad. And since you are finally the foreigner in a different place, you realize, oh, these things aren't normal. These things are a cultural thing that I have been grown up with, and I just think are normal because I've never known anything else. And in addition to that, I think it can allow you the really interesting opportunity to understand how it feels to be a foreigner, which in turn gives you an amazing opportunity to be able to empathize with people that are a foreigner in your country because you've experienced firsthand what it is like. And these are kind of like my main pillars of my culture and health philosophy. Also, just being aware that the United States is not a standard, and that there are many other cultural beliefs and practices that are equally as correct, some may be even better, and that it's really easy to kind of pass the American standard as like the thing that is right. But when you only have this kind of like my way or the highway perspective, you're missing out on a lot of other things. So I'm going to move myself over here as we continue into the experience section of my portfolio. And my experience section is kind of detailing some of the images and the reflections that I have taken throughout my journey. So this section contains postcards, photo voices, reflections, and travel images. First, we will look at the postcards. I'm not sure why that image is not loading all the way. Oh, there we go. So first we are talking about postcards. And I wrote bi-weekly postcards to my friends and family back home, starting with my initial excitement postcard before I even left my house, before I left my country. And just it details all throughout my abroad experience. So each image kind of has like a general prompt that it followed, and it is just kind of like the image that I took during my abroad experience, and then just me kind of explaining my experience to my friends and family, what I've experienced so far, what this image means to me, what I've observed about health in Europe, and all of these different kind of things. So I thought that this was a pretty cool thing to be able to add to my global citizen portfolio. So next, I will be going into photo voices. And photo voices are basically like one image that I took during my trip. And then it's kind of like my little blurb of like what this image meant to me, what I took and interpreted from this image, or basically like how I felt this image spoke culturally to where I was at. And I have quite a few different photo voices. Again, it's just the image and then kind of my interpretation of that image and what that means. The next, I have my reflections. I have two different forms of reflections. About half are video reflections and the other half are just written reflections. I had two reflections every day, one for each class. And I have them labeled according to class and according to reflection number. And then each reflection kind of has like a title, which summarizes the prompt basically that I was answering within that reflection. I have lots of videos, but I also have writings that I kind of I think these reflections were really cool because since I was making them every single day, it really allows you great insight onto like where my head was at along this experience and like what I was taking in, what I was learning, what I was experiencing in a really cool and unique way, since it was just like firsthand, me writing about it directly as it was happening. And this is kind of like my main like journal blog type of situation that I had. And I have 18 reflections for both classes, so there's quite a few to get through, but I do think that if you take the time to go through them, that you will really have a great idea of what my experience was like and kind of like follow along with me throughout my journey from beginning to end and like how I was feeling about everything as it was all occurring. And then probably my favorite part of the experience tab are my travel images. Give it a minute to load. And basically this is just kind of like my photo dump of all of the different pictures that I took throughout London and Paris. I love to take pictures, so there are definitely a lot in this section, but I think it is really cool to just like kind of go through and you get to see some of my experiences throughout my camera lens. So I think I have a lot of really cool, really nice images here that really give you a good insight into what my trip was like, what my journey was like, and the kind of different things that I did and that I saw in both London and Paris. And this is probably the section that I'm most excited to share with you all, just because I had so many pictures to not share with the world. And I hope that this kind of allows you to feel between the pictures and my reflections, my postcard, my photo voices, to really feel like you were experiencing this trip alongside me and help to take some of it from, take some of it, take something from it. And then the last or second to last section is my conclusion, which is just basically my concluding thoughts from the trip, which I feel like I've just talked so much during this video that I've already kind of gone into my conclusion and my concluding thoughts following my study abroad journey. But just kind of to summarize, this study abroad experience has truly been a life-changing experience, a once in a lifetime experience for sure. Not only has it instilled so much confidence in me for being able to be independent and explore new spaces by myself and to not be afraid of exploring new spaces and pushing myself past my comfort zone. It also allowed for me to develop such an appreciation for the cultural complexities that exist in other countries. I have had so many unique experiences and feeling like the outsider, but in like a new place, but also like gradually becoming more and more comfortable in this place, that I feel less like an outsider and more like, oh, I could live here. And like I know how things work here and I can, I know how to like function within this space now. It was just a really cool experience to kind of feel that transition between like a tourist and a traveler, which I feel like I really did live throughout this experience. I also was really grateful for this experience because it directly exposed me to a lot of like the cultural differences and cultural norms. And a lot of that just comes from like behavior. And I think that there's a lot to be learned from that the United States could take from Europe, especially just like the way of life there, how it's so different and how so many things that we take for granted do not exist in Europe and vice versa. I was very surprised that there was no ice and no air conditioning, especially in Paris. It's a little bit better in London. But this seems like such a small, minute detail that it's like something that we are so used to being so always like convenienced in America. And it even speaks to like in London, rarely did they give you a bag for free, a plastic bag. You would typically have to like pay like 50 cents or 25 cents or 10 cents for a bag. And it like makes you think a little extra of like, oh, do I really need this bag? No, I probably don't. Or you can probably bring your own reusable bag or use a tote bag. And just kind of like being directly immersed in this culture allowed you to like experience and like take note of a lot of things that I don't think that you maybe would have like really given a second thought to otherwise. Um, Obviously, linguistically, there are differences, but I honestly feel like the cultural differences far exceeded the linguistic ones. And probably my favorite cultural experience to take away from this journey was being present in the moment, enjoying where you're at, the space you're at, the company you're with, the food you're eating, to not be sitting on your phone the whole time you're at a dinner table, to actually sit there, enjoy the whole experience, enjoy the people that you're with, and be just like present and active in the moment. And I think that this is also directly correlating to having like an increased quality of life, more time outside, more time being present, more time being social, which ultimately increases your quality of life. And just kind of like this willingness to experience new things, both personally, professionally, and academically, is a major thing that I'm taking away from this trip. And in addition to that, just the aspect of like healthcare accessibility, both financially, culturally, all of it. There's so many nuances when it comes to culture and health, and having international experiences and seeing like the international behaviors and international health trends of other countries, I think can just be a really illuminating experience for the new generation of healthcare workers and health educators. So I highly encourage anybody who is able to take part in a trip like this to travel as much as you can. Returning back to my Futter quote, to travel the world, understand and appreciate these different cultures, and just to let them inspire you. To meet new people, put yourself out there in uncomfortable spaces, to learn, to grow, and to become a global citizen. So thank you so much for listening to my interview experience video. And I really appreciate you for checking out my global citizen portfolio and for following along my study abroad journey. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.